Greetings, everyone. I am Sean, also known as Wia, and I want to welcome you to the Healthy, Wealthy Mindset Hub. As you know, I used to think that financial security and personal wellness were separate until I discovered that they are actually deeply connected. So, as a life insurance broker, I help families protect their financial future. And as a transformational wellness educator and energy healer, I help people heal from the inside out. But what I've learned is that true abundance it happens when your health and your wealth and your mindset work together in harmony. So I am so happy that you decided to join me as we explore how to build financial security by optimizing your well being and shifting your energy to create the life that you truly deserve. Yeah, this is where transformation meets practical action. So let's dive in. Speaking of diving in, we will be speaking on money disorders. So, the title of this presentation is Money Disorders, the Psychology of Financial Health. Financial health is not just about numbers, it's deeply connected to our psychology and our emotions. This presentation will explore how our mindset, our behaviors, and thought patterns around money can impact our financial well being. We will uncover common money disorders, unhealthy psychological patterns that lead to problematic financial decisions. Understanding these problematic or psychological factors, is key to developing a healthier and more empowered relationship with money. By the end, you will have insights and strategies on how to improve your financial health from the inside out. Again, welcome and let's get started. So, let's talk about the wealth gap reality. Hmm. So, as you see here, there's a percentage, and these numbers were taken from the source is called it's a magazine article that was published September 4th, 2024. Yes, Solutions. And unfortunately, those publications will be, I believe they're already out of, they had their last publication. I'm not sure, but it was a really good, they had really good articles on just the current and past circumstances when it comes to Black families and the wealth gap. So, in this article, it stated that 25% of Black families had zero to negative wealth in 2021, 15% median wealth Black families compared to white families, right? And then their net worth was nothing. Many families were trapped in the debt cycle. And we're talking about 2021. And it quotes, "The truth is Black people are overwhelmingly broke. In 2021, nearly 25% of Black families in the United States," I want to add that because these are basically stats from the United States, had either no wealth, which would be equivalent to what you own minus what you owe, right? Or negative wealth. According to data from the Pew Research Center, the median wealth of Black families is only 15% of white families' median wealth. Given the startling reality of these numbers, it is no wonder that social media and group chats are, or ripe with people offering apparent solutions to financial woes. Again, this is from the article Yes Solutions, and it was published in 2024 September. So I just want to talk a little bit more about that. And first, let me say this disclaimer. I did some thorough research on this topic, and I have been researching this topic for years. So I will be reading some notes and things that I have, want to make sure that I'm right and exact in my delivery, because this is a topic that needs to be spoken about especially this day and time with the wealth transfer, and we're hearing the bugs of generational wealth, and people or attempting to getting their money in order, regardless of the type of socioeconomic status that they have. And also, you have to keep in mind that, based on the quote that came from the Yes Solutions magazine back in September 2024, there are a lot of hype around getting money, getting the bag, um, uh, doing different things that could, quote unquote, give someone or give a family instant gratification. And that's another thing too, that when you're talking about the psychological or the um, I would say the impact that it has on people who are trying to quote get that bag. A lot of people are doing or have done get rich quick schemes or have been um, victim to those things. And I'm talking about in melanated families and other families too. But my focus is on what I identify with in the target audience and the people that I work with and speak with and talk with on a daily basis, and just in my experiences. So I want to move on because there's a lot of information I want to cover, and I don't want to get stuck on one slide and just kind of keep going and going, because I'm pretty sure whatever I say here, we're going to talk about it later on in the presentation. Okay, so why this conversation matters. So that's basically what I was getting into just now. Why should we start talking about this? Right? You got a lot of people, many people, not just in the United States, but across the globe, like that's the buzz, generational wealth. But what is that? Right? How can we speak about generational wealth when we didn't come from wealth? And I'm just talking about collectively. Now, you do have some families, and there are some things that are being uncovered about the quote unquote 1% and the hues of those families, but that's another conversation for another day. What I'm talking about now is the reality of what we have known, right? So you're talking about collectively, the families that are not or have not been privy to that type of lifestyle as far as being able to pass on wealth to their descendants, when they're passed on. As we know, many financial services representatives, as myself, quote, life insurance brokers or life insurance agents, we all know of the stories of people who we have spoken to or people that we're related to or ourselves have been in situations where someone dies and there's no life insurance policy, right? So then what happens? You have the knee-jerk reactions, you have the donations, you have the fish fries. Everybody know about the fish fries, right? Everybody know about the fish fries. Everybody know about those type things that many Black families or melanated families have dealt with because of the lack of, not just the lack of having life insurance, but just the lack of education, the lack of knowledge. My personal story, let me get into that. Pretty much what got me in interested or involved in life insurance, period, is because when I began the process of, assisting my grandmother at the time, she was in her late 80s with her, bills and paperwork, and then coming across her policies and then seeing the type of policy that she had. I'm not going to go into it on this um, presentation, but I will say that my grandmother, amongst many elders, now she's 97, but many people in that generation, they were hit with the type of insurance policies that pretty much would not be beneficial to them or their families, right? But more so beneficial to the agents who wrote those policies for them. So here we are, years later, you know, looking at the preparations that are to come, and me knowing now what I didn't know then, I understand the type of policies that she had, which was one of those policies that pretty much would again fatten the pockets of the agents. Now, not all agents are like that, but there were many, especially back then. There were many of them. I don't see them coming around the neighborhoods right now. Like I right now live in a neighborhood that's you would call a black neighborhood, even though it's being gentrified. But I don't see that. I haven't seen it in years. So, and anyway, I am in this industry, so I would pretty much know if that was still going on. Not saying that it's not, but I know back then when I was a little girl, we would see them a lot going around to um, the hood, so to speak, or black neighborhoods, or low socioeconomic neighborhoods, and just kind of like they were doing their jobs. They were doing what they knew to do. But the reality is it's not beneficial to my grandmother or my family now, even though it would be helpful, but it wasn't anything to help with the house that she and my step grandfather has, to help with her, the assets that she's accumulated over the years. Like, that wasn't a conversation for our family back then, because everybody pretty much was in the mindset of just surviving. So when you're in the mindset of just surviving, you're not talking about how we're going to protect this asset, that asset, how we're going to create this for our grandbabies and their children. Like, that wasn't a conversation. Not for all families. Some of them, yes. So I just want to make that disclaimer. But for what many of us know, that wasn't our reality. So fast forward to the day, and just, focusing on what I have here, why this conversation matters is because now is the time. I talked a little bit about my personal journey, because trust me, there's a lot more to it than that in regards to my personal story with money, with currency, right? Mindset. Poor financial mindset blocks generational wealth. I can identify with that. And I'm pretty sure many of you. Developing a healthy financial mindset is critical for building generational wealth. A poor mindset would definitely be a major obstacle. And I'm pretty sure many of us can identify with that. We need to shift from a culture of bullying and division to one of community support and encouragement. That's something that we are learning now, but trust you me, I'm pretty sure many of us can say we didn't know that back then. When I say back, when 10 years ago, when I was, excuse me, 40 years ago, when I was 10, teenager, that wasn't a conversation. Um, and when I talk about a culture of bullying, and I would say this probably happens in all cultures, when you have the have and have nots, like, that's a division in itself. We were taught to go to school to better ourselves. But what happened to those of us who went to school or created businesses to better ourselves, right? And then when we became better financially, what did many people do to those of us who stayed stuck? You separated yourself from them, right? And sometimes it was just a given, you know, you but just think, you grew up with somebody, and then you become adults, and then they become, fairly successful financially, and you're stuck. That causes division. So when I say cultural bullying, then that's when people start talking about people, well, I got mine, he need to get his, or they still in the same spot. Instead of you showing them the ropes, right? Instead of you showing them how to get to a place financially, what do most people, are most, I'm saying collectively, they just kind of leave them there, leave them there. And you see it all the time. Celebrities, they become millionaires, billionaires, and they don't go back. However, another side to that is some of them have good reasons not to go back, right? And when you hear their story, they're like, I'm shoot, man, I can't go home. Everybody got their hand out. Or they talking, they telling me I changed. Well, yeah, it will change you. So it's a disconnect, right? So we have to bridge that gap. I'm not talking about just the wealth gap in regards to just money, but the mindset, you know, each one teach one. That's my plight. That's what I am working towards. That's why I am so passionate about this. I don't like to use the word passionate, but you know what I mean. Because I've been there. I've been kind of on both sides of the fence. People thinking that I have when I really didn't, or thinking I'm a certain way when I'm not. But then I understand why they would feel that way based on past experiences. All right, moving right along. Okay, and again, community support. So all of this that we're moving towards in terms of healing this disorder, healing this currency disorder, money disorder that we have. It has to do with the mindset, changing the mindset and working towards community support and, bridging the gaps and the division as far as, that piece, because we have been divided so long. And yeah, that definitely needs to be studied and fixed and healed. Okay. All right. Yeah, I can get on my soapbox. I'm not going to try to be doing this too long because I just want to get this message out. So the mental cost of money, all right? The mental cost of money. You got 72% of Americans stressed about money, right? And I'll tell you where I got these stats from. And this was, I think, yeah, back in, I'm looking at my notes, yeah, 2022. So 72% in 2022 March, and this is from the American Psychological Association, report that stressing about money at least sometime in the prior month. So this was March. So they were talking about February 2022. People were just stressed out. Research has shown that finances are the number one cause of stress. According to a FINRA report, the mental health impacts of money aren't equitably experienced. Hmm. Anxiety about personal finances disproportionately impacts certain communities, like women, people from under resourced or, low income communities, and communities of color. In fact, 65% of women feel anxious about their personal finances compared to 54% of men. Women, young adults, those who are low income, and those who are unmarried or unemployed are most financially anxious. There's a big problem when it comes to mental health and money. It's a complex relationship, one with many contributing factors that might feel totally out of your control. You might not notice how money and mental health have impacted you yet, but it could be influencing your decisions, your physical health, and even your behavior. And again, this is from the American Psychological Association when they did a survey back in March 2022. I do want to say, in honor of Men's Mental Health Month, this is Men's Mental Health Month, um, which I think this is a great thing, that we're really honoring that, because to me, they're like the silent complainers when it comes to money. There's always so much that are put on men in regards to being the provider and the protector of families. So I can't even say I understand. I could say that being, a single mom. I raised my son on my own, of course, with the help of my family, but his father wasn't involved financially. So I understand how that can be, how that takes a toll on your mental health when you're the one who is the provider of a person or people that's depending on you. So again, I just want to, honor, the men, all the men, regardless of the type of socioeconomic status they're in, because they do wear a lot of hats, or a heavy hat, when it comes to um, being the provider financially for families. And also the mental health or the stress that they deal with, because they're not complainers, and they don't, at least they weren't. These are different breed of men these days. Anyway, I'm just playing. I have to crack a joke. I'm sorry. But anyway, I'm just saying that's just, I'm glad that it's being talked about in regards to mental health. So I just wanted to shout that out. So let's talk a little bit about understanding money disorders. All right. So if you look at this pyramid, on the top of the pyramid, you have a spiritual connection. Money is energy, and it reflects inner values, right? Then you have the third tier, which is psychological patterns, which are deep rooted behaviors that shape financial choices. right? So we're talking about things that you've experienced in your childhood. And then I'm going to be talking more about the energy seats and how it reflects your decisions and your outlook and your perceptions and your experiences when it comes to this currency and relationships and everything. So when you think about how you were from the ages of 3 to 7, just think about it. For those of you who are listening, think about where you were, how, or if you can remember those ages that we're talking about. That's the age where your root chakra is being formed, right? The root chakra is for the safety and security. It's kind of forming that safety and security. Like, when babies are born, they're looking, they need everything from someone else. Like they can't do anything by themselves. So that area, the root chakra area, which is located at the base of your spine, between the ages of 3 to 7, and I start with those ages because that's basically when you're having the dialogue and communications in regards to give and take, sharing. You do all of that before the age of 3, but more so when that age on to 7, they're learning all of the things about sharing and caring, exchanging and things like that, feelings. So I want you to again think of yourself and how you were during that age. Were you with your family? Were you with a two-parent family? Do you remember it being a pleasing situation? Do you ever felt it was tense about? You probably don't remember any money conversations, but if you kind of put yourself back, like I remember at ages 3 to 7, we were living in New York, um, and one thing I do recall about my childhood when I was that age, and I am from a two-parent household. My mother and my father, it seems like things are more harmonized in terms of money and the things that we were privy to. Like I remember my dad like just always bringing us stuff home, like candy and things like that. Whenever we would go out, anything. I know me because I was a little bit more spoiled acting than my brother and sister. I was middle child, so go figure. I just remember like whenever me and my dad would go somewhere and if I wanted some bubble gum, he'd buy me some bubble gum. I don't ever remember him saying, I ain't got no money for no bubble gum. You know what I mean? I just remember also like, my mom, she was home all the time. She was made us meals all the time. Like she was just like the typical homemaker. It was just like a Leave It to Beaver type. I don't know if y'all know, like y'all know that story, but Gen Xers, y'all know about Leave It to Beaver. But I remember it being like that, just very harmonized. We would go shopping at Third Avenue. I lived in the Bronx, so we was like right up the street from Third Avenue. Like we were just happy. And I'm not saying we never were afterwards, but I just remember that between that age. So again, for you, as I'm speaking, you hear my tones, just kind of think of yourself back then. And I'm saying a lot to say because going back to the psychological patterns, deep rooted behaviors, those things are what's shaping or what has shaped you, right? Okay. So let's go to the clinical definition, which is psychological conditions which causes financial distress. Money issues. You need to know they are deep rooted. Money is currency, is energy. The spiritual meaning of money views it as a neutral energy that reflects our consciousness and serves as a tool for expressing our values. So rather than being inherently good or evil, money becomes a mirror of our inner state, revealing our fears, our trust levels, generosity, and spiritual development. So, spiritually, we're seen as stewards rather than owners of wealth, responsible for using the resources ethically and in service of the greater good. So, let's talk about that. Again, I don't want to stress, even though this is called money disorders, but money is energy. In the United States, we know it as you have notes, which is paper, then you have coins. But again, money is more so currency. I was just want to focus on currency. And maybe I should have called this presentation currency disorders, but no, I called it what I called it because that's what it is, right? And although I know we're in the position of the reset and, money as we know it will not be the same when we're going into the digital currency, that's all going to be the same thing. Because the end result is what? Being able to have the resources that we need to secure the lifestyles that we have, need, want. Whether it's digital, whether it's bartering with some cowrie shells, which is, what the ancients did, or just bartering in general. So then you move towards relationships. So that's another thing. It's deeper than just money. It's all about relationships with yourself, how you view yourself, relationships with people, because it's all about circulating, right? So it can either support your spiritual growth by providing the freedom to pursue your purpose and serve others, or hinder it when it becomes attached, fearful, or is used harmfully. So the key is to develop a conscious relationship with the currency based on abundance thinking, gratitude, generous circulation, and alignment with our deepest values. Using wealth as a vehicle for love, creativity, positive contribution to the world, right? Rather than as a source of security, identity, power over others, which is what we have been seeing, which many of us have grown up with. Look at what's going on with many of the celebrities that we all grew up with, loved, and were probably fans of. What's happening now? They are being exposed from the deeds that they have done. Why? To get that bag. Things that they had to, the contracts that they had to sign to be able to be in the light that we saw them in, right? What was the common denominator? Money. Many of them didn't want to go back to that lifestyle they probably came from. So they did what they did, and now it's being revealed. Conversations for another day, y'all. Conversations for another day. I would have to say this part of the presentation to me is most important. And I don't want to go back to what I was speaking of before when I was talking about the division and the culture bullying when it comes to the have and the have nots. We lack Sankofa. Now, what is Sankofa? The spirit of Sankofa is powerful. It's from the Akan concept of Ghana, Africa. And it emphasizes the wisdom of learning from the past to move forward effectively. And the word Sankofa literally means to retrieve or to go back and get. And it's often symbolized by a bird looking backwards while moving forward, just like the bird you see here on this slide. And it generally it forms a, we'd be doing a little heart shape. it forms a heart shaped symbol. So the spirit of Sankofa embodies the idea that progress isn't about abandoning your roots, but rather about understanding your history, your culture, and ancestral wisdom to build a better future. It recognizes that there are valuable lessons, knowledge, and practices from the past that shouldn't be lost, but should be retrieved, preserved, and applied to current challenges. And in the context of returning to educate your people about better living, Sankofa represents a profound responsibility and calling. It suggests that those who have gained knowledge, experience, or opportunities, it's their duty to return it to their communities, not with the sense of superiority, but with humility and respect for the wisdom that already exists here. This knowledge with traditional wisdom to create sustainable improvements. The Sankofa approach to community education involves understanding that your people already possess inherent strength and knowledge, and that true progress comes from building upon these foundations rather than replacing them. It's about creating bridges, again, bridging the gap, right, between ancestral wisdom and contemporary solutions, ensuring that development is culturally grounded and community driven rather than externally imposed. I paused for a few seconds because I wanted you to let that sink in. That's where we dropped the ball in our community. And it's not by our fault. This was designed this way. But you know the saying, when you know better, you do better, right? So the whole push to go and get your degree and get your businesses, get that money. Many of us did that. But then what did we do to those that decided that they didn't want to do that? We looked at them as being ignorant, or they didn't know that they didn't want to go to college. And okay, it's just like, and I'm gonna just say for me, like I have the type of temperament, like I'm kind of quiet around people I don't know. I'm kind of always been that way. So it was easier for people to target me for various reasons. But I always knew my heart, so it didn't really bother me. But I've often got accused of being that type person. Like she thinks she cute, which a lot of women think go through that anyway. But she thinks she's better than us, and this and that. And I've never thought that. But did it bother me? Yeah. But then again, that goes to the flip side of this whole problem that we are now solving. It's not just the ones who decided to better themselves and get the knowledge and get the jobs and get the businesses and get the houses and the properties and stuff. But it's also the ones on the other side who decided not to and caused the problem, because those people who decided to do those things, they're the ones who caused the bridge. So see, I just want you to understand, I'm not just talking about the haves being culturally, being a cultural bully to the ones that they left behind, but the have nots to the, or they be to something else too now, because they mad because their cousin or their whoever or their best friend or whatever decided to do something. So they become a bully in itself. So they start the sabotaging and, oh, she wasn't like that when back in the day, and then they want to bring up old stuff. I started to say something else, but I'm saying it's a poison, it's a sickness, and it needs to stop. You know, and it really do. It really needs to stop, because right now we're in the age of information. If anybody decide that they don't want to better themselves, that's generally their own problem. It's so much information and tools and resources and people out there that are here to help. So if a person decides that they want to be stuck in the same cycle, but then they still back in the same situations, yapping about the people who decided to move on or move out, that's still not helping us. So as I'm doing this presentation, I need for you to see where you fit, because you fit somewhere. See where you fit, see where those around you fit. If you find yourself around those type of people or cousins or whoever that's always talking about the cousin who made it, or always talking about the cousin who didn't make it, you need to use your voice to fix that, or your actions, however it may be. Sometimes you got to separate yourself from that. But it's a huge poison and problem in our community. And like I said, this is the best part to me of my presentation, because we all need to instill that spirit of Sankofa in us. We do. I'm going to move on because I could talk about this all day. I'm going to just move on to the next slide. All right. Mental health and money connection. So, again, the name of this presentation is the psychological effects of financial health, money disorders, right? How many of you ever thought that it was a connection? If you look at this circle or half circle, right, and you see all of these different types of diagnosis that we've heard, maybe some of us have, but do you know there's a direct connection to it? There's a direct connection to how you are with your finances, how you are with your relationships with others and yourself. I mean, some of you may know that, and you just look at the patterns that you have. Like, for instance, bipolar, you have the manic, right? Spending, creating all of this debt, and then you have, I don't know what the other opposite is. I think it's manic and it's, but anyway, this right here, it shows you how those mental health situations or disorders, how it connects with money and the patterns that you maybe have created for yourself, knowingly or unknowingly. So let's talk about it quickly. Depression. People who are depressed may neglect their finances, lack the energy or motivation to keep up with bills, or make impulsive purchases as a way of seeking temporary relief from their symptoms. You ever heard of retail therapy? Okay. You ever heard of just sitting in your bed all week or all day because you're depressed? Just letting things just go. Bills due. You're not even thinking about that because you're depressed. That happens. Anxiety. Anxiety, those who suffer from anxiety may have difficulties making decisions. That's where the indecisiveness comes in, and it leads to financial procrastination. Some people may also overspend as a form of self soothing, another form of retail therapy. Bipolar, again, manic phases, individuals may exhibit reckless spending and make poor financial decisions, resulting in substantial debt. And attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. People with ADHD often struggle with organization and they may have trouble keeping track of their finances. They may also struggle with impulsive spending. Let me say this, I am not a licensed psychologist. However, I did get my master's in school counseling and I have taken some psychology courses. So I just want to say I'm not a therapist. However, this information is privy to all of us. And I just wanted to show you how the connection between these disorders, these mental health disorders, can be a direct connection to how you are with your relationship with money. So, oh, one thing I forgot, addiction. Divert money, you divert that money to maintain the habit that you have. We all know of the crack era, horrible stories, horrible stories we hear about people who would steal and kill for money just to feed that addiction. That's definitely a money disorder. But have we really sat down and thought about how not only that with addiction, but maybe some of us have maybe taken it lightly, making jokes about it and things like that. But then you have other forms of these mental health disorders that causes all of these problems for an individual, right? So I just wanted to show you that in this slide. So let's look at some financial behavior red flags. And I'm just going to go through this quickly because when I read these off, I'm pretty sure you all will be able to identify with them. So let's look at the first one, greedy people, right? These people generally show signs of exploiting vulnerable people, those who hone in on the ones they can take advantage of. Running investment scams and falsifying reports. Now, that's not to say that all people that show greedy tendencies are like that. However, people who actually perform these acts, it's based on greed, right? Scams, falsifying reports, exploiting people who are vulnerable. Definitely. Looking at scarcity mindset, which many and most of us deal with. Hoarding while you neglect needs. You're hoarding because you have a fear of losing out. Extreme deprivation, depriving yourself of the needs by way of hoarding, and also avoiding opportunities. Just that fear. It's like you're allowing fear to paralyze you to be able to take minor risk to help your position or help your situation better because you're scared, right? You're always thinking, if I do this, I'm gonna lose out, and then you ain't have nothing to lose anyway. Addiction related, again, compulsive shopping. Some people really suffer from retail therapy, like it's a thing. Gambling away savings, we all know people who do that. And payday loan cycles, yeah, that was me one time. I was a payday loan cycle person. As I'm saying, these things that I'm talking about, I identify with a lot of them, which is why it's so important to me to not only continue the healing in my journey, but to help others, because many people are just not aware, or they're not holding themselves accountable. We live in a society where people are external. They may have issues, but then they are so used to blaming others that it becomes the norm. But when you have an addiction to payday loan cycles, because it is a cycle, trust me, I know. When you pay something that you got to pay more to pay that off, and you use all your check to pay that off, and you got to wait and pay it off, like it is horrible. I'm so glad I'm over that, but it was horrible, and it's a hard cycle to get out of. Seriously. Some more financial behavior red flags. You got envy and jealousy driven actions. Yes, that's going back to cultural bullying. Cultural bullying I was talking about. You got people, you got people that will have more than others and still be jealous of the people that don't have as much as they have. I'm talking about material wise. Like it happens. And so these are some of the things that they do. They sabotage their colleagues' success, or how they say they might withhold information. They may know how to create a business using the proper tax codes, but they see their friend struggling, or they see their friend trying to do things, and instead of them helping, they're like, he ain't got the fortitude to do that. He don't know how to do that. They're just watching. It's like, why would you do that? What happened to helping the next person? Even if they fall on their feet, if you have the information, why are you not sharing it, friend? Anyway, identify theft and financial fraud. Marrying someone primarily for money, manipulating relationships for financial gain, and stealing others' opportunities. So let's talk about lack of integrity, lying on job applications for higher pay, tax evasion and hiding income, billing for work not performed. And let me go back to, okay, lack of integrity. This is where that hookup culture come into, like that hookup. Like, what black folk come up with this hookup? Always, I remember that happened. That would be the norm. Like when I was in high school and we started getting jobs, little jobs at fast food, Walmart, Kmart, and we would always just kind of look for that person to hook us up. I don't know where we get that from. I gotta look into that because I was in that too. I was, looking for the hookup, or expecting for somebody to hook me up because they was my friend or my cousin and they worked at cruises. I remember I had a friend that worked at cruises. Boy, we used to go get them burgers for free all the time, not thinking about how it could impact or affect the friend who had the job. We were just looking out for self, right? And then sometimes people have these jobs and they would welcome it. So that was just part of the whole culture. They would just welcome that. Excuse me. I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, they would just, come on, y'all, you get the hookup. I used to work at a place and I did it, at a retail shop. Come to find out that my manager actually knew I was doing that, and she never said anything because she was like my sister's friend. I kind of felt bad, but hey, I was part of that hookup club. But anyway, lacking integrity, violating professional ethics for profit, and breaking contracts when convenient. Relationship, family destruction, money. Oh my gosh. I would say in the industry that I'm in with life insurance, even before that, um, when it seems like when a loved one dies, that's when, excuse me, shit be hitting the fan in these families. Because for one, we tend to not have our houses in order, our financial houses in order. Now, things are getting better now because people are becoming more educated and they are sharing the knowledge, which is great. But many of you who are in my generation, was a Generation X, and just in general, if you come from melanated families, you probably saw this at least once in your life, where someone dies and then next thing you know, that cousin that you used to see, you don't see them anymore. Sometimes for years, sometimes never. Why? Because people fell out over stuff, right? A lot of stuff comes out when somebody dies and they don't have things in order, or they may have some things in order, and the way that they had it laid out, the family that they left behind wasn't pleased with what was on the will. I mean, it's just a horrible situation. So again, we are in the era where we have to know that these material things, you hear it's not important, but even though we hear, oh, the money is not everything, material things is just stuff. But why do we put so much stock in it? Why do we put so much stock in it to where you would literally not speak to people that you grew up with? Because you didn't like how the outcome was when it comes to someone who crossed over and they didn't leave you what they thought they was going to leave you, or whatever the case may be. It's just horrible. Um, and like I said, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I think that therapists and psychologists, that should definitely be something that they should really, really focus on. Like, I'm talking about doing campaigns. Like, really, when you hear somebody cross, like, you should probably just really promote your services to that family, because they need it. They definitely need therapy and some type of consultation when it comes to that, because a lot of people, money, material things, and just not having your financial house in order has destroyed many families. And we all know at least one. So, again, this would include stealing from family and friends, using children college funds for personal expenses, hiding major debts from your spouse, and abandoning family responsibilities for money, and using financial control to manipulate others. So, let's look at reflecting on your personal money story. I think I did a pretty good job with um, giving you some insight on the connections between money disorders and um, the mental health connection with people and families, the lack thereof. I want to ask you these questions, and I want you to really, really think about it for yourself. Going back to, and I said I'm going to do another presentation or webinar on how the energy seats in your experience with money or in your childhood, how it really manifests now. It manifests into how you are now with relationships, with yourself, people, and your money. So, childhood impressions. Money, what money message did you receive growing up? Your family history. Who made money, right? When you think about it, who lost it? What patterns were repeated? Self-worth connection. Did you feel enough regardless of family finances? And generational anxiety. These fears, you should know, were passed down. Regardless of how you are now, you could be the richest person on your block. But there is a lot of generational anxiety that has been passed down to many of us. And I'm talking to my melanated colored people of color. We have a different money story than those of other ethnic groups. So that's why I'm focusing on us right now. Money anxiety has been passed down through generations, and much of what we are feeling and thinking about when it comes to the spiritual meaning of money isn't from our own lifetimes. Take a moment to think about where you got your ideas about money. And here's some questions that you can ask yourself. What did I learn about money when I was a child? Did I feel that we had enough in my family, such as food, shelter, adequate space, availability of money? Did we move around a lot? Do you recall being evicted when you was a child? Like, those are traumatic experiences. Were you made to feel like you were better than others because your family had more than them? Did you grow up feeling like you was better than everybody because y'all had the biggest whatever? Did I feel like I was enough as a child? Did you feel like you was enough as a child? And what is your family history in terms of money? Once you look back a few generations, at least four, we can go back four, like your mother and father, their mother and father, right? That's your grandparents and your great parents and your great great grandparents. If you can go back that far and make the connection, that'll do you good. So, again, who made it, who lost it, and what decisions were made because of money or the lack of it? So, let's talk about some racial capitalism, because that is definitely a part of our money story. Racial capitalism refers to the economic system that derives social and economic value from racial identity and exploitation. This term, you have to give credit to scholar Cedric Robinson. You can look him up. And he explained how racism and capitalism are fundamentally linked. You got the academic origin, right? Which I just explained from Cedric Robinson. The system connection, racism and capitalism, how they're linked, and economic extraction. The systems deriving value from racial identity. All right, so you have slavery and economic exploitation. And this economic foundation, slavery wasn't just a social system, but an economic one that built American wealth. The unpaid, excuse me, y'all. I'm trying to get this out. All right. The unpaid labor of enslaved people created massive wealth for others while denying wealth building to those providing the labor. Then you have post-emancipation challenges. So after slavery, things such as sharecropping, convict leasing, and debt peonage continued economic exploitation under different systems. Wealth impact. The inability to accumulate assets during slavery and its aftermath created a wealth gap that has compounded over generations. So it was making it harder for us to come up because it was just the inability to accumulate assets, like it was just becoming harder and harder, right? And then you have something called something called the land dispossession and property rights. And this is excuse me, I'm trying to get this out of the way. This is where you have like Black-owned farmland dropped from 16 million acres to under 1%. I mean, lands were being, y'all know the story. Stealing land. Indigenous communities experienced massive land dispossession, meaning people taking their lands, while many Black farmers lost land through legal manipulation, intimidation, and violence. Then you have broken promises, such as the 40 acres and a mule's crap. And it discussed policies like, again, 40 acres and a mule that were promised but reversed, preventing asset accumulation at critical historical moments. Modern statistics by 1910. I just want to make sure I'm on the right side. Okay. Because I'm, like I said, y'all, I have notes, so I'm making sure that I am reading. I don't want to miss anything. So I'm reading some notes to you as I present. Okay, so we're still, okay, we're still on the same page. So we have the broken promises, which is basically equivalent to the 40 acres and a mule crap's what I said. That was promised, but then reversed. And then, just playing games. They were playing games. And then right now, modern statistics by 1910, well, back then, 1910, Black Americans owned 16 million acres. And less than 1% of rural land is Black owned, which was redefining the housing discrimination. Then you have institutionalized practices. The Federal Housing Administration explicitly refused to insure mortgages in Black neighborhoods from the 1930s through the 1960s, creating color-coded maps that marked Black neighborhoods as hazardous. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Excuse me, y'all. Get some water. Wealth building denied. Home ownership has been the primary wealth building tool for middle-class Americans. This systematic exclusion prevented generations from building equity. The lasting impact was that even decades after these practices were outlawed, their effects persist in property values, neighborhood investment, and intergenerational wealth. So then you have banking, discrimination, and financial services. That's where I come in at. See, many of us in this industry are here for a reason. Yeah, you have to make money. Of course, you make money with these things, but you have to be able to understand the impact these financial services has had. Like going back to my story with my grandmother, and just I haven't really gotten to my personal story, which I will. But all of this that she and my other grandmother, who's on the other side to help us, and all of our grandmothers has dealt with, and then their mothers. So we're talking about our people, right? So going back to banking discrimination and financial services, you got banking deserts. And historically, what this meant was that they redlined neighborhoods, often to become banking deserts, lacking traditional financial institution, which means I'm gonna tell you right now, my parents are from a small town in South Carolina called Denmark. And I believe, I'm blinking now, I hadn't been to Denmark in about 2 years, but I know there's probably only one, maybe two banks in that town. But I don't ever remember it being a place where you can get the resources that you need to build. Like there was really no building in that town. And I'm pretty sure the reasons that I just described to you are listed as far as why, you know. Huh. Um, Predatory alternative. These gaps were filled by check cashing services, payday lenders, and high interest financial products that extracted wealth rather than built it. So if you look at these neighborhoods and you see a lot of these buildings were there, the payday buildings, check cashing places, you could check a cat, excuse me, cash check at the gas station, all kind of stuff. So there was like these little, yeah, man, it's crazy how I'm remembering and I know these things, exist in the neighborhoods that I grew up in. Credit access. Disparities in credit access and higher interest rates for people of color meant paying more for the same financial products and services. So how dare they, right? The poor communities had higher interest rates or were denied loans to build wealth or to build businesses. Whereas you would get people that come from other countries here and they were given thousands of dollars to build, which is why you go to places like Denmark and you have these stores, this little strip. And all of the people who own the stores did not look like me. You had the Chinese restaurant, you have yeah, that happens. And I'm doing this presentation, but I'm just remembering or just knowing because it happens now. It's going on right now, 2025. So you talk about employment and income. Again, you got wage gaps. You got occupational segregation, which historically this was exclusion from certain professions and industries, limiting earning potential across generations. Now, is that happening in these days? I'm not going to speak on it and say 100% yes, but I do know, like, especially when you had many women who were leaving the homes as being housewives and going into the workforce. And there were a lot of complaints about the gap in their salaries. So it just didn't happen for, our people, but it happened for women. It just happened for all these groups that they call, quote, minorities, which I really wish they, I don't even say that, but, that whole minority thing is like, they're basically telling you in your face, okay, we're not going to allow this these type of people to have the same resources as the majority, which back then the majority was you said 1% of the Caucasian race or races that were able to make these decisions. So then you got wage gaps. Persistent wage disparities meant less income to save or invest. Union exclusion. You have many early labor unions explicitly excluding workers of color and limiting access to jobs with better benefits. The psychological impact and intergenerational transmission of this, you have financial trauma, survival strategies, and transmitted beliefs. So I just want to say, in my last video, I was talking a little bit about we know how to make lemon out of lemonade out of lemons. When I was speaking about the the whole situation with the student loans and how this whole wealth gap or disparity of being allowed the financial resources, it actually strengthened us in terms of being able to make a dollar out of 15 cents, um, being able to create, to be an alchemist, to turn lead into gold, being able to take a hard situation and flourish with it. Like that's the beauty of our people. That's what makes us. But the things that we had to go through to be able to do that. So I just listed most of them, just to kind of go into the whole um, historical economic justices that has impacted or is impacting the state that we're in mentally and financially. And we need to really start paying attention to it and paying attention to ourselves and how it impacts us and how it affects the decisions that we have made and will make. Because again, when you know better, you do better. Right? So this is a call out to my soul tribe because abundance is our birthright. Yet we struggle due to mindset, trauma, and inadequate financial education. So you have things such as mindset barriers, limiting belief with block financial growth, trauma recovery, healing financial wounds, which opens new possibilities, and financial education, which creates the confidence and competence to be able to move forward, to be able to fix whatever that's broken in your financial world. But first, it starts with the mindset. This is a call out again to my soul tribe and those of us who know within every with every cell in our body that abundance is our birthright. But you got to get past that mindset blockage and the trauma and recovering from trauma because we all have it. So let's talk about the path to recovery. The first step is acknowledging the problem. Recovery usually requires addressing both the practical, financial aspects, and underlying emotional and psychological patterns. Again, the path to recovery, it requires addressing both the practical financial aspects and the underlying emotional and psychological patterns. One, you want to acknowledge the problem, recognize both financial symptoms and emotional roots. Two, you want to address the practical issues. So that goes with budget planning, debt elimination, spending controls, all of those things that we know and we've learned. I actually taught in high school, I taught a class, what was it called? Financial fitness. I remember teaching that class to 10th graders. And I myself, even though I was a school teacher, I was struggling financially. Y'all know y'all here teachers don't make money, but even though I was doing pretty good, for myself at that time, because I didn't have the resources or the tools, or I wasn't in that space that mentally to know how my finances was affecting my whole world. I was still teaching a financial fitness class to high school students, right? But of course, we had a curriculum that we had to abide by to make sure the students were being taught by the standards set by the state. And I just remember teaching them like how to write checks and what the different branches of the banks were and just like the basic information. But it wasn't about, like, even for me teaching that class, it was just like making it fun. We created checks and they put their names on it and we did a little store and it was cute, but it's still, I don't think I made an impact because I remember looking at this like, why are we teaching, So I'm remembering those days. And I'm now, when I'm doing now with being a financial wellness educator, I'm like, okay, if I knew then what I know now, oh my gosh, what difference I really could have made in that class with those students. Because now I know it's not just about the practical issues. It's about the practical issues, but you have to get to the problem. You have to acknowledge where are you mentally? Where's your mindset? And then you have to go towards how you're going to address those issues because everybody's going to address them differently, right? Based on where you are mentally, based on your know-how, and based on the resources that are allotted to you to do so. And the last but very important step is to heal those psychological patterns. You're going to work with the therapist on those underlying issues, or you can work with me on focusing on how to hone in on your energy centers and how that can help you in a variety of ways. You have different, different tools and resources that are out there, but you have to get with one or a few that matches what you are wanting to do in your world, in your financial world. And again, healing your money relationship is going to first start with self-awareness. It's going to start with start by acknowledging your money disorders and understanding how they affect your financial decisions. This is the first step towards healing, is acknowledgement. Then you can meditate. And these are just some, resources you can use. You can meditate to gain clarity and peace, or pray and pray. It can also reduce anxiety and anything stress related to money or making decisions financially. It improves your focus and also promote a more positive mindset. What I would suggest sometimes during the day, and this is not, when you talk about meditations, this is not something that you just want to always just set a time, which is good to do, but you don't want to always set a time to I'm gonna do 30 minutes of meditation. You could just meditate right then and there. Like if you feel like you're anxious about money or anything in your life, like you could just do a quick breathing exercise. And there's so many tools you could look up on YouTube or whatever. But there's breathing techniques you can use, just to center yourself, to ground yourself when you feel that anxiety arising. Then you have mindfulness. Practice being present and conscious of your financial habits. Mindfulness can help you recognize impulsive spending patterns and replace them with healthier behavior. Then you have gratitude. You want to cultivate a sense of gratitude for what you already have. And this can help you to shift your reality and shift your focus and your mindset to a mindset of lack to one of abundance. Some others are affirmations, healing practices such as spiritual healing practices such as Reiki, energy healing, or prayer. These can help remove blockages related to money and abundance. You also can get some professional guidance, as I mentioned earlier, therapist, a counselor, and consider someone who specializes in money disorders. They can provide techniques for addressing the underlying issues causing your financial difficulties. Then you have financial education. You want to learn about money management, investing, and financial planning. Knowledge is power and can help you feel more confident about your financial decisions. Community support, Sankofa. You want to join a support group or community of people facing similar challenges that can help you with understanding and to give you advice and encouragement. Now, I want to briefly discuss with you, and all the information is going to be at the bottom in the description. These are some financial wellness services that I can provide for you, which is energy healing. And this is Reiki. And with this service, we will address conscious and subconscious money blocks. The reason why I love Reiki because it does help with subconscious healing. Many things that we do in this life is based on the subconscious level, yet we have no idea that we are operating on the subconscious level. So that's going back to those stages or the age stages that I was, expressing earlier, as far as things that happened to you when you was 3 to 7, which is your root chakra. And then the chakra after that, it's like from 7 to 14, which is your sacral chakra. And then you have your solar plexus, which is like 14 to 21 years old. Now, these are the chakras that are really in formation during this time now, right? And then you have your heart chakra, which is like from like 21 to 28, right? And then you have your throat chakra, your communication, which is like from 28 to 32. And then, your communication, how you communicate, not just verbal, but nonverbal, your everything. Man, it's amazing. And then you have some people call your third eye chakra, your pineal gland chakra. And this is like from like 36, no, 32 to 36 or something like that. But I know like 42 to 49 is your crown chakra. So that's like the spiritual knowledge, the esoteric knowledge, being able to connect everything that you have experienced in life and connect it so that you can ascend to the next level, right? Ascending to the next level. And I know some of you, this is not for everybody. I get it, but it's the reality, regardless of what you or who you serve or what you follow in this life. We all have these. So all I'm saying, if you're interested in knowing more about it and how it affects you and your relationship with yourself, with your money, and just how things are kind of spiraling for you in your world, I do free consultations, 30 minutes, and we can talk about it. Right. Again, I also provide free money assessments that are based on those ages, those stages of your life, from the ones that I just mentioned, from 3 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21. Like those stages in your life, when you just, as you hear my voice and I'm talking about it, if you can just think of where you were during that time in your life and then look at your life now, you probably can make the connections yourself. But I'm here to help you dive deeper in that. All right. So I do free financial assessment, which is a life stages financial wellness review. I do have that information at the bottom if you're interested. Um, Also, I do offer a free family financial literacy ebook, and it gives you some guidance on how to have the creative money conversations with your family. I have that information in the bottom for you as well. I also have a 25 questions ebook on how to help you position yourself as a wealth protector when speaking with life insurance agents. So you want to know what are the right questions to ask. How can you position yourself regardless of what stage you're in right now financially? That information is in about all of this. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what I offer, but everything will be in the description at the bottom. And then also have a strategy session, which is 90 minutes, and that's $55. But it provides a structured approach to improving your financial health, basically including everything that I've discussed in terms of your how your money story was, why it was like that, what you were going through in your world, and then also steps for improvement and things that you can do from this point on to make sure that you flourish financially. Excuse me. Now, for my wealth protection services, which is a critical part of the comprehensive financial plan, I offer a range of services to help protect your assets and your financial future. Life insurance provides financial security for your loved ones in the event of your passing. Long term care services can help you uncover the cost of extended medical care as you age. Disability insurance replaces a portion of your income if you become unable to work due to an illness or an injury. And estate planning helps you ensure that your assets are distributed according to your wishes after you're gone. So, like I said, there's so much more to be said about money disorders and the psychological effects of financial health. But the biggest thing is knowing where you are now and where you want to go. And I can help you with that. This is not anything that I just did a academic book research on. I'm living this. So I know these things work for the greater good of your financial world. First thing you need to do is get your financial house in order. Like I said, I do offer estate planning services in addition to life insurance services, disability, and long-term care. And most importantly, we got to get that mind right before we decide to do all of this. So, if any of this sounds like something that you would like to expound on and talk more about, I would just say just hit me up for a free consultation. The link is in the description box below. And again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen and learn. And please, I offer any comments, questions you may have. I'm easy to find and contact if you want to have some more discussions about this. And thank you again. And I look forward to, I guess, you all seeing me on the next video. Thank you. And until we meet the next time. And I just want to say thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening. And I do welcome any comments or questions if you may have. Please leave them in the comment section below. Or again, you can hit me up for a free consultation and we could discuss further how my services can help you. Or if you want to discuss anything that was shared on this presentation, because money disorders is something that we all need to tackle regardless of what socioeconomic status you're in. If you're a melanated person or a person of color, you have been impacted by many of the things that were discussed on this presentation. So I welcome the conversation. And again, thank you all. And until next time, peace.